Now I would say I played Just Cause 3 back in 2016, maybe 2015 sort of time. And it was most likely my first single player game that I ever played, and I haven't played it since then. And similar with Battlefront 2, where I played it around that time and didn't play it again until a couple weeks ago. And here we are doing the same thing with Just Cause. I did put out a community vote the other day, and you guys said that Just Cause 3 is the best one by a mile. I think it was almost 70%, which does make sense because I forgot how good this game is somehow, and I think it's mainly to do with the world, and that's sort of what separates the games. Of course, they're all similar in a way in their gameplay, but it's the actual building of the world and its design that does sort of differentiate them, at least in my opinion. I was half thinking about doing Just Cause 4 because that one is in a way a controversial one because it sort of strayed away from that world, as in how good they did it in the third game, and apparently it sort of took a step back in 4, and it gained sort of mixed reviews, so who knows, I might do 4 in the future, but for this video, we're looking at Just Cause 3. As I was on the topic of the world in this game is set in the fictional island of Medici, which is basically a mixture of Italy and just those surrounding areas, and it looks beautiful, especially for a almost 10-year-old game. I think it just hit 9 years old, and it's crazy how well it still holds up now. It still looks amazing, and just how vibrant the colours are. Like, no matter what you do in this game, you just know whatever you're doing, it's going to look amazing, and you're going to be doing it in the most beautiful areas ever. Just fields of colours, any colour you could think of, like purples with the lavender and the yellow sunflowers, just fields upon fields of them. And because it's all around multiple islands, you're going to be around sea all the time, and it's similar to Black Flag, where they nailed that blue look of the ocean and just get that, you know, tropical and Mediterranean design. And like I said, it's been ages, so I honestly forgot how good it looked, and I understand why people say that this world is by far the best one in the series. And if you have played Far Cry 6, although it does have a bunch of mixed reviews, I have done a video on it and I didn't mind that game. I didn't think it was the worst, and I was a big fan of the world in that game. And I'd like to say that this, Just Cause 3, is probably a mixture of Far Cry 6, but of course the gameplay is totally different. Far Cry 6 is all set in Cuba, so it is similar, but in terms of what you actually do in the game and the actual gameplay system, you sort of do need a good world, and that does make up for the majority of the game, because you do a bunch of travelling, although it doesn't feel, you know, long-winded or anything, because there's so many different ways you can get around the island in like quick succession. It doesn't feel like a drag to travel around the world, and it looks amazing, so it's a win-win. So you play as the main man, Rico Rodriguez, and basically you help the rebel team to basically fight the military, and that whole military team is run by D. Ravelo, who's basically looking to take over this whole entire island. And although you have this rebel team, the main focus is on you because you have all the equipment and you're like the main man to do the job. So it's quite independent, and you do feel like you're just on top of the world, even though you do have a bunch of backup that you can call in. So a lot of these islands are taken over by the evil military, so you actually have to take that over, as in overturning the military outposts. So you go around the map and there's a bunch of different regions that are taken over, and in a way you basically just liberate the entire island. As I mentioned, that could be military outposts or actual villages and towns that they've taken over, and then you liberate those towns, and at the end you put a flag up to show that you have taken it over. And we can't talk about this game if we don't mention the explosions that are in this game, because a majority of the gameplay when you are taking over these regions, a lot of it is just exploding stuff. So there could be a bunch of fuel and oil tanks that you can destroy, or multiple vehicles or machinery in this location, and you do know because it's highlighted in red, and when you look at it, it's so clear that that is one that you can explode. And they did really nail how well you can just destroy everything. It's such a destructible environment, so it's so satisfying, and that's the main thing that I remember from playing it all those years ago. In a way, probably the only thing I remember, and just having so much fun going around and exploding everything because it looks so good. So it's not just a simple, you know, explosion, it usually sets off a bunch of other ones, and as I mentioned, it's such a destructible environment, so it just impacts the entire area around it, and you see all the material and the rubble going everywhere. And back then I didn't really focus on the story, I didn't really get that concept, or at least I just didn't want to, I didn't think. But that's the thing, is that you don't necessarily have to. You could easily just go around basically liberating it all on your own and not really following the story aspect. Of course I definitely do recommend focusing on that, but I'm just mentioning that back then I didn't, again, and I still had a lot of fun, because it's so easy and so tempting to just do it yourself and go around all these areas. And that sort of brings me on to your arsenal and the loadout you have. So because you're always moving around the map going to each location, if you're going to do that on foot, that'll be quite a boring game. Although the actual exploding aspect is great, the traversing would just take it down entirely. But luckily, a big thing about this and the gameplay is that you have a bunch of ways to get around. So the main thing is probably the grapple, as well as your parachute and the wingsuit. You don't unlock all of that straight away, but I do recommend trying to get it as early as possible, because it makes things so much easier and faster, which is great for the pacing of your gameplay. Now, if we look at the grapple, for example, you can use that to basically boost yourself up and get to locations, similar to sort of a zip line, I guess. But you can also use it in other ways, as in you can shoot it at multiple things and hold it down, and use it as a tool to move stuff around. And I mean pretty much anything. So that's the exploding ones that you can do. So you could take one fuel tank and one vehicle, for example, and then pull that together with that grapple to make a massive explosion. So there's a bunch of ways you can go about it. It doesn't become repetitive. You can even grapple onto people, or also do the same thing where you fling them about with that grapple. And that's just so much fun with just one item. And then of course you have the parachute, so you can grapple up and then open your parachute. And it does get a bit of getting used to, I must mention that. At least for me it did, even though I played it before. It might just be because I'm on keyboard and mouse this time around. It is a bit different, and it does get a bit of getting used to. But eventually you'll get used to it, and it's so fun. So you have to sort of time it correctly so that you grapple for a certain amount of time, and then you pull your parachute so you get the biggest boost and the biggest airtime. Although either way, again, you can use the grapple whilst you parachute. So you can just move about all the time whilst using that, and in a way you can never touch the ground if you did want to do that. And then of course you can use the wingsuit when you do eventually unlock it, and that is a game changer, because you already had the grapple and the parachute and you sort of think that's enough, and then when you do unlock the wingsuit and you start using it, you realise how good it is, because no matter where you are, no matter how low down you are, you can basically use it anywhere, and then you can just get so much airtime and go right back up to the sky, which was interesting, because I thought with the wingsuit you had to be very high up and have a lot of open space to use it, but apparently not. Of course, maybe it's different in real life, I'm sure, but in this game it is definitely very exaggerated, and that's what makes it so fun. And for the most part, the wingsuit is quite easy to control no matter where you are, and of course you can upgrade all of this entirely, so you can add boosts onto the wingsuit, as well as machine guns and different weapons. I'm not going to go over the entire list of everything, because there's a bunch of different tabs on so many skill trees of different parts of the gameplay. I'll just go over the actual category rather than the individual upgrades. So there's destruction mods, so basically just adding on different grenades that you can use. And then there's an extra explosive category, so that basically can change rocket thrusters and different planted explosives, just making it bigger and better. And then there's the tether mods, as in the grapple that you can use to basically pull things together, as in increasing their amount and their capacity. And then traversal mods, so quite self-explanatory, like the wingsuit for example. The land vehicle mods, as in the vehicles on the ground. And then the air vehicle mods, so that's the entire categories covered. But there's a bunch of different mods that you can do, and it does, in a way, it's quite a small game, but there's so much stuff to upgrade. It has a bunch of replayability, and you're always ever changing your gameplay. And by the time you finish the entire story, there's probably still a good amount of upgrades that you haven't got and haven't even tried out at all. So you can sink in a lot of hours into this game for sure. And to unlock these upgrades and these skills, you have to unlock gears, so just another word for skill points basically, and you get them by completing either missions, or there's different sort of small challenges and trails you can do. So as in a wingsuit sort of trial that you can do by going through different rings, and if you do a select amount, then you can get a gear from that, or multiple gears. The same goes with land vehicles and sea races that you can do, just a bunch of different small challenges on the side of the story. So again, just more replayability. And then that also brings me on to rebel drops, so that's a good feature in the game where you can call in a bunch of different weapons and vehicles, but you only gain these little beacons that you get for the drops, and you find them near sort of garages and after you liberate a place. They're not the easiest thing to find, they're not very common, but that's because you can call in basically anything, and that's one vehicle of your choice and up to 3 weapons to choose from. And what's great is that you can call it in at basically any time, so you could be in the middle of a fight and you can call in a weapon, or if you want to get out of there and call in a vehicle. The weapons are in their categories of two-handed, dual-wield and special. So there's dual-wield pistols and SMGs, the normal assault rifles and LMGs for the two-handed, and then different launchers and snipers for the specials. But there's a ton of different weapons in this game. It's quite a good selection for how old it is, and I definitely won't cover all the cars and the vehicles and the motorcycles, because that's what also makes this world so good. Because as I mentioned at the start, I know I keep saying, but the traversing system is incredible in this game, because there's so many different ways you can get around, and you don't even have to use a vehicle. But if you did, there's probably over 100 different vehicles in this game. Maybe a bit of an exaggeration, maybe around 60 or 50, but there's a lot. And just a variety. I mean, there's the military cars, there's sports cars, off-road ones and vintage ones, and of course the boats as well, the helicopters, the planes. There's just so much to uncover in this game, and I think it's definitely worth playing for sure in 2025, almost 10 years later. And I just forgot how fun it is. I mean, I remembered it a bit, but just not entirely. And just remembering it slightly, that's what made me want to play it. And if you like action and open world games, then this is the one for you. It's a ton of fun, and I think you just wouldn't get bored at all. It's also quite easy as well. Of course, there's different difficulty levels, but for the most part, if you are in a sticky situation, you can just fly out of there. And I really didn't die that many times, unless it was just in a stupid way. But I think that's where I end my review of Just Cause 3 in 2025. And comment down below if you have any other questions on the game that I didn't mention. I'll be happy to reply to you. And if you did enjoy this video or found it helpful, then let me know by tapping that like button down below. And if you enjoy single player and also multiplayer games as well, then I have a bunch of different playlists on the channel, so you can subscribe if you want to see that. Thank you all for the support, and if you want to support me any further, then I do have the membership option on the channel to gain access to various perks. Then just tap the join button. I really do appreciate it, and thank you for watching until the very end. And that was Just Cause 3, and bye bye.